Was the decision by President Truman to end the war with Japan by using the newly developed atomic bomb the correct decision? A press release from President Harry S. Truman on August 6, 1945, concerning the dropping of the atomic bomb on Hiroshima, Japan. Quote, 16 hours ago, an American airplane dropped one bomb on Hiroshima and destroyed its usefulness to the enemy. That bomb had more power than 20,000 tons of TNT. The Japanese began the war from the air at Pearl Harbor. They have been repaid manyfold, and the end is not yet. With this bomb, we have now added a new and revolutionary increase in destruction to supplement our growing power of our armed forces. In their present form, these bombs are now in production, and even more powerful forms are in development. Truman's reason for dropping the atomic bomb on Japan. After President Roosevelt died, Truman became president. At that time, he was informed by his Secretary of War, Simpson, of the secret project that FDR had launched during the war called the Manhattan Project. This project had been charged with developing the world's first atomic bomb, and Simpson had informed him that it was very nearly ready to be tested. Simpson suggested to the president that he create a committee of top political, military, and scientific members, and they would advise the president as to what should be done with the A-bomb after it was successfully tested. The first test in New Mexico was successful, and the committee recommended that the bomb should be used without specific warning against a target that would clearly show its devastating effects. Truman understood that the bomb would inflict damage and casualties beyond imagination. His committee believed that no technical demonstration over a deserted island would likely bring the war to an end. They suggested that the bomb be used against an enemy target. Truman decided to use the bomb as a weapon of war to be dropped on a military target. He said the world will note that the first atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, a military base. That was because we wished in this first attack to avoid, insofar as was possible, the killing of civilians. Later, Truman justified the use of the bomb as the only alternative to the invasion of Japan, believing that the decision saved 250,000 lives that would have been lost if we invaded Japan. Some have suggested that the real target of dropping the bomb was the Soviet Union. If the bomb was dropped, the war would end sooner, and that would deprive the Soviets of much involvement in the war's endgame and a right to be involved with the post-war occupation of Japan. Criticism of Truman's decision. Both the civilian and military advisors told Truman that the bomb was unnecessary to bring the war to an end, that Japan was close to surrendering because the Soviet Union was about to enter the war, that the United States leaders knew that the end of the war was near. Many of the military leaders saw no need for the use of the bomb. General Arnold, commander of the Army Air Force, thought that Japan could be bombed into submission with the use of conventional weapons. Fleet Admiral Leahy was disgusted with the idea of attacking women and children. General Eisenhower hoped that we would never use such a thing against an enemy because he felt that the United States should not introduce into war something as horrible and destructive as this atomic bomb. Truman's own cabinet urged Truman to seek a clarification of Japan's position regarding the emperor and surrendering. Finally, there was the view of Secretary of State Burns, who convinced Truman that the use of the bomb would be an important diplomatic instrument in dealing with the Soviets. These views by Secretary Burns and the other high-level military leaders removes this issue from the debate that it was a military necessity. General William T. Sherman, before and during the Civil War, warned his fellow Southern countrymen and future adversaries on the dangers of conducting total war. He said, "You people of the South don't know what you're doing. This country will be drenched in blood, and God only knows how it will end. It's all folly, madness, and a crime against civilization. You speak lightly of war. You don't know what you're talking about. War is a terrible thing." During the Battle of Atlanta, Georgia, he said, "You cannot qualify war in harsher terms than I will. War is cruelty. You cannot refine it. And those who brought war into your country deserve all the curses and maledictions a people can pour out." Japan had started the war with an attack on the United States Navy at Pearl Harbor and the Philippine Islands. These attacks came with no warning, and Japan had fought in all the battles in the Pacific as total war. Near the end of the war, the Japanese were still fighting almost to the last man on the Pacific Islands and using suicide kamikaze airplanes to attack our naval fleets. We had firebombed their capital, Tokyo, and killed 100,000 mostly civilian casualties in a few short days. With no previous history on the effect of radiation released by the use of the atomic bomb on large masses of people, Truman had no reason in a total war not to use all of the United States weapons against an enemy that seemed not to show any signs that they were surrendering or making any statement that they wanted to end this long and terrible war. The view of the morality of this decision as a war crime. The International Military Tribunal specifies a war crime as a conspiracy to carry out aggressive war, the launching of the aggression, the killing and destroying beyond the justification of a military necessity, and crimes against humanity. While Truman believed that Hiroshima was a military target, the loss of civilian life in this attack was also unavoidable. His military leaders believed it was out of character of the United States to use the weapon. Truman said that the bomb had more power than 20,000 tons of TNT. Secretary of State Burns convinced Truman that the use of the bomb would be an important diplomatic instrument in dealing with the Soviets. Given those statements and motives, Truman's decision could be viewed as a borderline war crime. Hitler's Holocaust war crimes was his planned and desired killing of innocent people. At best, Truman's decision was the unavoidable killing of civilians in an all-out total war that had already killed hundreds of thousands of civilians. The events in August of 1945. The key reason why the war came to an end, the actions of the emperor. The Japanese military leaders hoped that they could hold out until the ground invasion of Japan began. Their view was that they would be able to inflict so many casualties on the Allies that Japan might still win some sort of negotiated settlement. Even after Hiroshima and Nagasaki A-bomb attacks, the Imperial Council vote to surrender was stalemated by a 3-3 tie. Finally, the emperor stepped forward from his normally silent ceremonial role and personally broke the tie, ordering Japan to surrender. On August 10, 1945, Japan offered to surrender to the Allies if the emperor was allowed to remain in a the nominal head of state. On August 12th, the United States announced that it would accept the Japanese surrender only if the emperor remained in a ceremonial capacity. The Japanese government debated whether to accept the American terms or fight on. On August 12th, the emperor instructed the council to accept the Allied terms. He told them, quote, "I cannot endure the thought of letting my people suffer any longer. If the war did not end, the whole nation would be reduced to ashes," unquote. In the Japanese military, loyalty to the emperor was an absolute, but so was the refusal to surrender. The emperor recorded a message in which he personally accepted the Allies' surrender terms, to be broadcast over Japanese radio the following day. Some within the Japanese military actually attempted to steal this recording before it could be broadcast, while others attempted a more general military coup in order to seize power and continue the war. In the end, most members of the military remained loyal to the emperor. On August 15, 1945, the emperor's broadcast announcing Japanese surrender was heard via radio all over Japan. One can see from these events in August of 1945 that both Truman and his critics were wrong. It was the action by the emperor that leads to the final surrender of Japan. If that had not occurred, Truman might have been able to hit Japan with between 7 and 8 more A-bombs by the end of October of 1945. If the critics had their way, and Truman did not use the A-bomb, then the United States military might have lost between 20,000 and 46,000 soldiers invading Japan. Finally, the Soviet Union would have gained control of all of the Korean Peninsula and part of Japan as part of the final victory. This would have created a two-part Japanese country, much like Germany was after the war. Germany remained a two-state country until the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989.